Welcome back everyone to our weekly video series Saints Marching, during which we learn about a different saint of the week each week. And as I've been saying, I'm selecting some of our lesser known saints in our hope that our knowledge of the saints will continue to be expanded. Our Saints Marching saint of the week this week is Saint Scholastica. Her memorial is February 10th. She was born in 480 and died in 543. Saint Scholastica was the sister of Saint Benedict, the famous founder of Western monasticism, and some tradition hold that that they were in fact twin, brother and sister. She consecrated her life to God from her youth, and after her brother went off to found the famous monastery Monte Cassino, she took up her own abode in a region only a few miles away from him, where she founded and governed her own monastery of nuns. She appealed to her brother, however, to serve as director of herself and her nuns, particularly like in the administrative side, in the capacity of a sort of administrator, while she tended to the day-to-day spiritual and catechetical care of her nuns. It was her custom once a year to visit her brother at Monte Cassino, but as it was their rule of life that she was not allowed to enter his monastery where the men lived, and nor he visit hers where she lived, they would meet in kind of a central area, like in a house or a hut, somewhat equidistant from both their respective monasteries. These visits were spent in conferring together on spiritual matters, updating one another in the life of their respective monasteries, what's been going on, and also on this, the contemplative, more spiritual side of their prayer lives and so on, kind of maybe being sort of a spiritual director for one another. On one occasion, as they passed the time as usual in these sorts of prayerful and pious conversations, when it was evening, they set to conclude their reflections, and then it was time for him to go back to his monastery. But she begged him to remain until the next day because they were so engrossed in their conversation. But he insisted that he simply could not spend the night outside his monastery. Thus was the rule of life that they set up for themselves. She then prayed, and a ferocious thunderstorm all of a sudden burst out, such that Benedict and his companions could not return home to their monastery. So they stayed there in that house, and they continued their spiritual conversation through the night. The next morning they parted, but they would never again meet in this life, because 3 days later Scholastica died. So maybe her insistence that they have this conversation was some forewarning that she knew in her mind and heart that her time on earth was about to end, and she wanted to have this one last deep conversation with her beloved twin brother before that happened. So anyway, she died, and her brother had a vision of her soul in the likeness of a bird flying upward into the sky, going to heaven. And then he sent some of his monks down to her monastery to retrieve her body, and then he had her body laid to rest in the tomb that he had prepared for himself. And then he himself would later be buried there, so they're in the same location. And her death happened in the year 543, and not long thereafter, a couple years later, he himself died as well. This is the most that we kind of know of her life, and the most detail that he himself had recorded in those final years of his life. So this was Saint Scholastica, and so we'll pray for her intercession as well. Saint Scholastica, pray for us. Thank you for joining us, and join us again next week when we continue our video series, Saints Marching. God bless you all.